Hi, and welcome back to Fan the Flame Dates. I'm Scott Phillips with House on the Rock Family Ministries. In this video, I'd like to talk about one of the most important principles about family life that I've learned, and that is that our relationship with someone is infinitely more important than our relation to them. My daughter Abby's birth was an exciting 18 hours of my life. Our first child, Greg, had arrived a week late, so as we reached the 2 weeks to go point for Abby, we figured we had plenty of time. Then Mary's water broke. Flying around the house, we got everything packed up and headed out the door. After dropping Greg off with Mary's parents, we headed to the hospital, me fighting the urge to drive like NASCAR legend Dale Earnhardt. I'll spare you the details from here, but let's just say that things got real interesting in a hurry, and I was there every step of the way. The next day, I walked over to an elderly neighbor to share the good news of Abby's arrival. And as I recounted all the happenings of the previous 24 hours, I noticed a wide grin beginning to form on his face. As I wrapped up my tale of triumph, he commented that things surely had changed since his daughter was born. And when I asked him what he meant, he explained that when his wife went in labor, he dropped her off at the front of the hospital where the nurses took her in and told him to go home and wait for a call. Try doing that today, dads. The old English proverb that children should be seen and not heard dates the whole way back to at least the 15th century, according to some scholars. In general, reflects an attitude that what a child thinks, feels, or wants is secondary to what an adult thinks, feels, or wants. And because of that attitude, some parents, and especially dads, have kept their children at a distance relationally. And this distance is most prevalent when the children are small. You know, when I was working, it was very easy for me to defer to my wife when it came to relating to our kids. Quite frankly, I didn't feel as if I had the patience to sit there and listen to their stories or spend an hour going through the cycle of building a tower of blocks only to have our kids knock them down. It didn't seem as if there was much of a point to it all, and I figured that once the kids grew up a little, I would sort of jump in then. Once I started staying at home, I quickly realized that those times of building the same tower of blocks, or fixing the same toy Jeep, or reading the same story are not really about playing with our kids. Those times were really about investing in my relationship with them. Those times were about building a connection to them that is going to last for a lifetime. Again, one of the things that I've learned about life, and it was only reinforced during my time at home, is that our relation to someone is not nearly as important as our relationship with them. This is a wonderful truth because we basically have no control over our relation to someone. Think about it. God determined who our parents would be and who our children would be. He alone gave us our grandparents, our aunts, and our uncles. We inherited those relations at birth. Our relationship with them, however, is something that is largely in our control. We can decide how much time we spend with someone and how much we share with them, how much we listen, and how much we care. You know, one of my other older neighbors mentioned that one way he knew that his father loved him when he was growing up was the occasional time that his dad would rest his hand on my neighbor's head. Our kids need more than that. It shouldn't surprise us that many kids have a deeper relationship with mom than with dad. Besides the most obvious fact that most moms spend more time with their kids than most dads, they're usually better at relating to them. So the question is, why? Well, part of the reason is related to how women are just wired to be more relational than men. But another big part of it is being relational was modeled for them by their mothers. The generational cycle continues repeatedly, and it works for or against, depending upon your perspective, dads as well. They keep their distance relationally for their kids because that's what was modeled by their dads. Many of today's dads have trouble saying, "I love you" to their kids because it was never or rarely said to them. You know, the phrase quality time entered our culture in the 1970s and has since grown in usage. It essentially means devoting all of one's energy into a relationship for a short period of time. And as our society has become increasingly busier, the belief in the idea of quality time has become the deliverance for many parents and spouses. After all, if one is too busy for quantity time, At least you can have quality time. And as a working parent, I was a firm believer in quality time. But as a stay-at-home dad, I now see the value in quantity time. Simply put, quantity time yields quality time. Quality time can sometimes be scheduled, but it usually appears out of nowhere while we are spending quantity time with our families. My relationship with each of our children grew exponentially when I became a stay-at-homer, simply because I was around them more. Often quality time would come for 10 or 15 minutes several times throughout the day. And when you think about it, this makes sense. Have you ever seen your relationship with someone grow when you were constantly apart? Well, neither have I. Yet too many parents cling to the false hope of quality time when their children are younger, only to see their children reach the teenage and young adult years with little or no relationship to speak of. In Galatians 6:7, Paul writes, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." Paul is talking specifically about the support of Christian workers, but the general principle can be used for a host of applications. If we sow seeds of apathy, indifference, or neglect into our children when they are young, we shouldn't be surprised when we harvest a relationship with our children that is cold and distant when they become adults. Likewise, we can't sow a row and expect to get an acre of harvest. If we only plant a row of quality time with our kids, we shouldn't expect an acre of harvest in the form of plenty of time together when they are teenagers and young adults. So why is this so important? Why should parents be concerned about their relationship with their kids? Well, Hebrews 12:5-6 states that if you have forgotten the word of encouragement that addresses you as sons, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes everyone he accepts as a son." Why can I accept discipline from my Heavenly Father? Because I know that he loves me and ultimately wants the very best for me in my life. Now, I usually don't like his discipline, and sometimes I kick and scream a little bit, but I do accept it. The same is true for our children. The only way that they will accept the correction that I give them is if they know that I love them and ultimately want the best for them. That's why the relationship is so important. If I do not cultivate a meaningful relationship with my kids, then any correction I bring into their life, as severe as discipline or as gentle as advice, will be viewed suspiciously by them. They'll look for motives behind the correction other than my wanting what is best for them. Those who have been remarried and find themselves parenting stepchildren will often find that their new sons and daughters rebel against any correction they give them. The reason for this often has nothing to do with the kids liking their new step-parent. It's because the new step-parent has yet to have sufficient time to prove that he or she loves the children. Younger kids will accept correction from step-parents earlier than teens, but even then it may take up to 2 years. That's why it's so critical for the biological parents to step in and provide correction for their kids, even if that wasn't their role in their first marriage. The same concept applies to all families. If one parent, again stereotypically the dad, is constantly away from the family and not connecting the kids relationally, and then tries to step in to provide correction, well, things are just not going to go well. The kids don't feel loved, and therefore they can start to believe, whether it is true or not, that the parent only has what is best for the parent in mind, not what is best for the kids. In the area I grew up in and currently live in, it's typical for a father to work 50 to 60 hours a week at his job and then have a variety of hobbies like hunting, golfing, or riding four-wheelers that take him away from his family even more. And many of these men then wonder why they aren't connecting to their kids. For many of us dads, and I'm speaking mainly to dads here, but all of this can apply to moms, the pull of work is strong, and if we're not careful, it will pull us away from our families. We are great at rationalizing our work priority. As working parents, we can often justify our time spent at work as necessary in order to provide for our families. The Bible is very clear in its instruction to work, but the fact remains that God intends for our priorities to be our relationship to Him, then to our spouse, then to our kids, and then and only then to our work. If we place work anywhere else on our list of priorities, we aren't living according to God's plan. Again, according to God, quantity time is quality time. So what can the working parents do? Unfortunately, there may not be an easy answer. Perhaps cut back on hobbies for a while, perhaps sacrifice some pay and adjust the budget in order to be able to work a little bit less. Perhaps put off buying that latest toy. Perhaps clear out days on the calendar when we will not schedule anything so we can spend those days with our families. Perhaps decide that we don't need to watch 15 hours of football every weekend in the fall and winter, or that we don't need to see all 162 Phillies games. Ouch, that one hurt to say. You get the idea. Tough decisions may be needed, but it will be worth it. What can the stay-at-home parent do to help? Because stay-at-home spouses have quantity time built into their schedules, some more than others depending on the kids' ages and activities, their relationship with their kids is often very strong. Praise God for that. And then pray for wisdom and opportunity for your spouse to develop his or her relationship with the kids. Encourage your kids to spend as much time as possible with your working spouse. Help guard the family calendar from becoming so full of activities that the family rarely gets to be just a family. So, I invite you once again to spend some time discussing the need-to-need, nose-to-nose questions that we've prepared for you and talk about each of you individually and you as a couple investing in your relationship with each other and with each of your kids. We'll be praying for your discussion as you seek to continue to build your relationship and your house on the rock. Thanks for watching.